Millionaire CEO needed a fake wife for his sister's wedding, then saw the woman he couldn't forget. Jackson Reed was the kind of man people noticed the second he walked into a room, tall, sharply dressed, with eyes that carried both authority and secrets. He was the definition of a self-made millionaire CEO. On the outside, he had everything: power, wealth, and a name that opened doors. But inside, he carried a quiet emptiness he never admitted to anyone. His life was controlled, every detail measured, until one phone call from his sister changed everything. She was getting married, a grand, luxurious wedding that demanded perfection. But there was one problem. Jackson couldn't show up alone. His family, his business partners, the press, everyone expected him to arrive with someone on his side. And in their world, appearances meant everything. He needed a wife, or at least the illusion of one. For Jackson, this wasn't about love. It was about survival, the kind of survival only the wealthy understood, where reputation was currency and loneliness had to be hidden behind a polished smile. He told himself it would be simple: find someone who could play the role, stand beside him through the wedding, and then disappear once the lights dimmed. No strings, no emotions, just business. But fate doesn't always follow the rules. Because the moment Jackson saw her, the woman he once thought he had lost forever, he realized this arrangement was about to be anything but simple. The search wasn't easy. Jackson didn't have time for games, nor did he trust easily. His assistant lined up a list of women who would fit the image: a polished actress, a socialite who loved attention, a woman from a wealthy family who'd have her own reasons to agree. They all looked perfect on paper, but none of them felt right. Then came the unexpected twist. At a quiet cafe downtown, Jackson saw her, Elise Hart. The name alone was enough to shake him, but the sight of her nearly stopped him cold. She wasn't the glamorous type his world usually demanded. She was simple, graceful in a way that didn't try to be noticed, and her smile, though faint, still carried warmth he hadn't felt in years. Years ago, they had crossed paths briefly but deeply, in a way Jackson never forgot. And now here she was, sitting with a notebook and a coffee, completely unaware of the storm about to pull her in. Jackson sat across from her, his voice low but steady. "Elise, I need your help." She blinked, surprised. "My help? With what?" He leaned forward, his gaze never wavering. "I need a wife, just for a few weeks, a fake one." Her laugh was small, almost disbelieving. "You're joking." "I don't joke about things like this. It's my sister's wedding, the press will be there, my family will be watching. I need someone I can trust to stand beside me, someone who won't complicate things." Elise's brow furrowed, her instincts screaming to walk away, but there was something in his eyes, something tired, something honest, that made her pause, and though she didn't know why, a part of her heart whispered that this moment was about to change everything. Elise thought about his words long after that cafe meeting. It sounded absurd, pretending to be someone's wife, especially his. Jackson Hale wasn't just anyone. He was the man whose name filled business magazines, whose face appeared on finance covers, the man people whispered about with equal parts envy and awe. And yet, when she looked at him across that cafe table, all she saw was a brother desperate to protect his sister's happiness. There was no arrogance in his tone, no trace of the ruthless CEO he was known to be, just a quiet, firm sincerity. Still, Elise wasn't convinced. "Why me?" she asked when they met again, this time in his glass-walled office high above the city. Jackson leaned back, studying her with the sharpness of a man who measured every risk. "Because you're not part of this world," he said simply. "You're not here for money or fame or headlines. You're the only one I can trust not to turn this into something it's not." She crossed her arms, her voice steady. "And what exactly would it be?" "A contract. No strings, no real marriage, just a role to play until my sister walks down the aisle. After that, you walk away. No questions, no ties." On the table between them, he slid a folder toward her. Inside was a neatly drafted agreement, terms, conditions, even compensation that made her eyes widen. It was more money she could have dreamed of, enough to solve problems she never let anyone see. Elise closed the folder slowly, her heart racing. "This is crazy," she whispered. Jackson's gaze softened, just slightly. Sometimes crazy is the only thing that works. Her fingers lingered on the folder. She knew the moment she signed it, nothing would ever be the same again.
The pen felt heavier than it should have. Elise sat across from Jackson in that sunlit office, her hand trembling ever so slightly as she signed the final page of the contract. When she placed the pen down, there was no applause, no celebration, just silence. A silence that marked the beginning of something neither of them could predict. Jackson stood, extending his hand with the precision of a businessman sealing a deal. Elise shook it, but the warmth of his palm lingered longer than she expected. For a moment, she wasn't sure if this was a transaction or the start of a dangerous unknown. The following week moved faster than Elise could keep up with. Jackson's world was unlike anything she had ever stepped into. Designer gowns were delivered to her apartment, courtesy of stylists he had on call. A sleek black car now waited outside her building each morning, ferrying her to fittings, rehearsals, and private dinners where they practiced the part of being a couple. The first time she stepped out of the car beside him, cameras flashed so bright it felt like lightning. Jackson's arms slipped around her waist, steady and commanding, pulling her closer as if she truly belonged at his side. Elise forced a smile, her heart beat thundering as the world mistook her for the woman who had captured the city's most untouchable man. Behind closed doors, though, it was different. Jackson was precise, disciplined, and oddly patient. He guided her through every detail, how to walk into a room with confidence, how to tilt her head when reporters asked personal questions, even how to lace her fingers through his so it looked natural. At night, Elise would lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if she had made the biggest mistake of her life, or if, somehow, this strange arrangement would become the turning point she never saw coming.
The first time Elise laughed in front of him, really laughed, it startled Jackson more than he cared to admit. They were sitting in the back of the car after a long dinner rehearsal when she told a story about her childhood. Her laughter filled the space, warm and unguarded, and for a fleeting second, Jackson forgot it was all pretend. He caught himself staring, his chest tightening in a way that didn't belong to contracts or obligations. Day by day, the lines blurred. At public events, Jackson's hand lingered a second too long on her lower back. Elise's eyes sought his in crowded rooms instinctively, as if he were her anchor. They began finishing each other's sentences in interviews, and their smiles looked less rehearsed and more real. But it wasn't just appearances. There were quieter moments, too. One evening, after another round of fittings, Elise kicked off her heels in frustration, sinking onto his leather sofa. "I don't know how you live like this," she murmured. Jackson, loosening his tie, surprised her by saying softly, "Most days I don't know either." It was the first time he let her glimpse the man behind the title. Elise found herself studying him in those unguarded hours. The way his jaw tensed when he was lost in thought, how his eyes softened when he spoke about his sister, how his silence carried unspoken weight. He wasn't just the millionaire CEO everyone admired. He was a man who carried responsibilities heavier than anyone should. And Jackson? he found himself noticing Elise in ways that unsettled him. The determination in her walk, the kindness she showed even to waiters and assistants, the vulnerability she tried to hide when she thought no one was watching. She wasn't supposed to matter. Yet every day, she did. By the time the wedding rehearsals began, Jackson realized something dangerous. Pretending with Elise had become easier than breathing. Because somewhere between the lies and the flashes of the cameras, he was no longer pretending at all.
At first, the cracks showed in small, almost invisible ways. Elise caught herself reaching for Jackson's hand, even when no one was watching. He would brush a strand of hair from her face when there were no cameras, no audience. Their act was supposed to end the moment the spotlight dimmed, but lately, the spotlight didn't seem to matter. It was during one late-night walk in the garden of his estate that the mask nearly broke entirely. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of roses, and Elise, hugging her shawl closer, whispered, "Sometimes I forget this isn't real." She regretted the words the instant they left her lips, but Jackson didn't laugh or remind her of the contract. Instead, he just looked at her. Long, steady, unflinching. The kind of look that said he was thinking the exact same thing. But reality always finds its way back. The next morning, a newspaper headline screamed, "CEO and mysterious fiancé, too perfect to be true?" Rumors swirled, journalists began digging, and suddenly every glance, every smile between them was being dissected. Elise felt the weight of scrutiny she never signed up for. She wasn't just pretending anymore, she was under attack. Jackson, used to public battles, tried to shield her. "Don't let them get to you," he said firmly, his protective side taking over. But Elise wasn't blind. She could see how tense his jaw was, how his hand curled into a fist when reporters pushed too far. The mask he wore as the unshakable CEO was starting to slip, and beneath it, Elise saw a man torn between control and chaos. And the most dangerous crack of all, in the quiet of his office one night, Jackson almost kissed her. He stopped himself at the very last second, pulling back as though burned, muttering, "This was never part of the deal." Elise's heart pounded as she realized what scared her wasn't his hesitation. It was the fact that she wanted him to stop pretending too.
It happened faster than either of them expected. The wedding week had turned into a battlefield of whispers, paparazzi flashes, and veiled questions from powerful guests. Elise felt suffocated, like every breath she took was rehearsed for an audience. She smiled until her cheeks hurt, laughed at conversations she didn't understand, and played the perfect fiancé to perfection, until she couldn't anymore. The breaking point came at the rehearsal dinner. Elise had slipped away to the terrace for air, her chest tight with panic. She wasn't built for this world of cameras and ruthless gossip. But when she overheard two guests sneering, "She's nothing but a gold digger. He'll toss her out after the wedding," something inside her shattered. She spun around, only to find Jackson standing there. He had heard it too. His expression was stormy, his jaw clenched, and for a moment Elise thought he would finally set the record straight, that he would tell the world she was more than just a contract. But instead, he said nothing. His silence cut deeper than the insult. "Why won't you say anything?" Elise demanded, her voice trembling. "You wanted me to be here, to pretend to be yours, and now when they tear me apart, you just stand there?" Jackson's hands curled at his sides. "Because if I start defending you, Elise, it won't stop. They'll dig deeper. They'll tear into you more than you can handle. I'm trying to protect you." But his words didn't soothe her. They only widened the distance. Tears stung her eyes as she whispered, "Protect me or protect yourself. Maybe this whole thing was only ever about you." The fight left both of them raw. For the first time, Jackson's control cracked open completely. He reached for her, his voice low, breaking. "You think I don't care? You think this is just an act for me?" His hand trembled against her cheek, and in his eyes Elise saw it, the truth he was too afraid to admit. The moment teetered on the edge of collapse. Either they would walk away from the lie or step straight into the dangerous territory of love, and neither of them was ready to face which choice they were making.
The fight had left the air heavy, charged with things unsaid. Elise's chest still ached from the sting of his silence, but Jackson's eyes held her captive, dark, restless, and brimming with emotions he could no longer hide. Neither of them moved for a long moment, as if the whole world had gone still, waiting for them to make the next choice. "Elise?" His voice cracked like a man on the edge. "I never meant for this to hurt you." His words trembled in the air, not rehearsed, not controlled by the cameras, just raw truth. Something inside her softened, against her will. Her anger fought with the way her heart raced every time he looked at her. She should have turned away, should have kept the boundaries intact, but when Jackson's hand reached for hers, pulling her closer, Elise didn't resist. And then it happened. His lips found hers, not rehearsed, not staged for the cameras, but desperate, searching, real. The kiss was fire and vulnerability all at once, breaking every rule of their contract. Elise's breath hitched as her hands instinctively clutched his jacket, pulling him closer instead of pushing him away. It wasn't supposed to feel like this. It wasn't supposed to make her knees weak or make the world disappear. But it did. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were shaken. Elise's lips trembled as she whispered, "This wasn't part of the deal." Jackson's reply was barely audible, his forehead resting against hers. "Maybe the deal doesn't matter anymore." For the first time, the line between pretend and reality was gone, and the danger of that truth lingered in every heartbeat between them.
The kiss had been their secret, a fragile truth held in stolen moments and long silences. But secrets have a way of slipping through cracks, and theirs was no different. It happened at the wedding. Music soared, laughter filled the hall, and Elise walked in beside Jackson, glowing in her simple dress. She had told herself it was just part of the act, but the way Jackson's hand lingered at the small of her back, the way his gaze never strayed from her, it betrayed something deeper. One photo was all it took. A photographer caught them sharing a look, one that was too intimate, too real to be staged. By the next morning, it was everywhere. Headlines screamed, "Millionaire CEO and his fake wife?" Or something more. The world had found out. Elise's phone wouldn't stop buzzing, questions pouring in from strangers, clients, even friends who thought she had lied to them. She felt trapped, her chest tightening with panic. This wasn't what she signed up for. Her quiet life was gone, replaced with flashing cameras and whispered judgments. And then came the harshest blow. Jackson's business partners demanded answers, accusing him of losing focus. His family, too, questioned the truth of it all. The lie that was supposed to protect them had now turned into a storm threatening to destroy everything. In the middle of it, Elise faced Jackson. Her voice broke as she said, "We can't do this anymore. Not like this. I can't be your secret or your scandal. I need to know. Was it ever real for you, or was I just a convenient story?" Jackson's silence cut deeper than any headline could. For the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of the world, but fear of losing her.
Elise had always thought she was strong, but in that moment, standing before Jackson, her heart breaking under the weight of unspoken words, she realized strength wasn't just about enduring, it was about choosing. She could walk away. She could reclaim her quiet life, mend her reputation, and pretend none of it had ever happened. But every step she tried to take toward that freedom, something pulled her back. The memory of his laugh, the way he held her when the world felt too heavy, the truth she had seen in his eyes when he kissed her. Jackson, for once, wasn't the composed CEO the world knew. He was just a man stripped of his defenses, looking at the woman who had changed him. He finally spoke, his voice low, almost breaking. "Elise, I thought I could keep this as a contract. I thought I could control it, but every day with you tore down walls I didn't even know I had. You weren't a lie. You were the only truth I've ever known. If walking away means you'll be safe, I'll let you go. But if there's even a part of you that feels what I feel, stay. Not as a pretend wife, as my real one." The world outside was still loud, but inside that silence between them, Elise felt clarity. Love was never safe, never simple, but maybe it was worth the risk. She stepped closer, tears burning her eyes, and whispered, "Then let's stop pretending."
Months later, the story had changed. The world no longer called it a scandal, it called it a love story. Headlines shifted from fake marriage to a real beginning. Jackson and Elise didn't care much about the noise anymore. They had built something stronger than appearances. In the quiet of their home, Elise's books were stacked on shelves Jackson had insisted on building with his own hands. The garden she once dreamed of was blooming in the backyard because he had remembered. And sometimes, when she worked late at her desk, she'd look up to see him there. No longer the untouchable man in the suit, but the one who always made sure she wasn't alone. Their love hadn't erased the scars of their pasts. It hadn't silenced the world completely. But it had given them something unshakable: each other. On a rainy afternoon, Elise stood by the window, her hand resting on the glass. Jackson came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked softly. She leaned back into him, a smile tugging at her lips. "Only that we wasted time pretending. Everything else, I'd do it all over again." And with that, the story that began as a contract ended as a promise. Quiet, real, and forever.
We invite you to join Lightstories if this story strikes a chord with you, makes you smile, or stirs up strong emotions in you. Each story is meant to uplift, heal, and remind you of the beauty that comes from human connection. Share this story with someone who believes in kindness and second chances by clicking the subscribe button and turning on the notification bell. Keep your heart open till we cross paths again, because you never know when someone might ask, "Can I join you here?"